Occasionally, you'll come across the odd horror film with the words based on true events preceding the opening credits. And often this leaves viewers scrambling the internet for clues and facts about how some supernatural killer could possibly be real, or evidence of real hauntings terrorizing the families at the heart of those tales. Most of the time, that phrase, based on, is a very loose interpretation of events, taking eerie stories and exaggerating the details to give you the spookies you came to receive. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Every new sub helps us achieve our goal and keeps us motivated to create new content. With that being said, I'm your host, Jamie, and here are 10 horror films inspired by true stories. Number 1, The Conjuring. 2013 brought us the supernatural thriller that became an instant box office hit. Following the Perron family in 1971 Rhode Island, we see the family dealing with the supernatural. The mom, Carolyn, woke up frequently with bruises. One of the daughters befriends a spirit named Rory, and the other siblings are getting attacked or just scared due to whispers, feelings, and smells. The family ended up getting help from renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. They quickly came to the house to investigate, and obviously, things amp up at this point. More sightings, more pounding of doors, and a music box playing on its own accord. They also learned that a woman, Bathsheba Sherman, hung herself after sacrificing her 1-week-old baby to Satan, all the while cursing the land and anybody who tried to take her land. As things become worse in the house, the family did leave temporarily, but eventually came back to deal with the exorcism of the house. Now, the rest of the film you'll have to check out. But let's talk about the real story behind this movie. In 1971, the Perron family moved into an old farmhouse and started experiencing supernatural activities. The dad, Roger, was a traveling salesman, so he didn't experience as much as the rest of the family. But the girls really do have some tales to tell. Andrea, the eldest daughter, even went on to write a book and do several guest appearances on a variety of shows, and is still active in the paranormal field. She explains that she often felt calm with those spirits she was with, but others didn't have the same experiences. In the movie, Carolyn sought out the Warrens, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Ed and Lorraine heard about this case from other investigators and decided by themselves to go see for themselves. Sure, the house was really owned by Bathsheba's husband, but she really was hung for witchcraft back during the Salem witch trials. But we all know, they didn't burn witches, they burned women. But back to it. The Warrens ended up guiding Roger and Carolyn Perron on a seance that Andrea did witness and wrote about in her book, House of Darkness, House of Light. And trust me, it's a good read. But after about 10 years of living in that house, the family moved to Georgia and tries to stay out of the spotlight. So if you want to see this over-dramatized tale, you can see it on Max, Hulu, Roku, Prime, Google Play, Apple TV, and Fandango. Number 2, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. In 2005, we were introduced to the exorcism of Emily Rose, who, by all intents and purposes, is a fictional character. Emily was based on Anna Elizabeth McCall, who died in the 70s. Back then, mental illness was not as understood as it is today, and yet it's still a lot of guesswork. However, this film is more of a courtroom drama than a supernatural horror. We mainly follow Erin Berner as she builds a case against Father Richard Moore, the Catholic priest who performed the exorcism that led to Emily's untimely death. Erin ends up experiencing things she can't explain, and the priest says he explained them as well. Eventually, the priest is convicted of negligent homicide, but doesn't have to serve any time due to his sentence being reduced as time served. Let's be real though. Anna was a 23-year-old woman in 1976 who had already been diagnosed with psychosis caused by temporal lobe epilepsy and depression. A few years later, after she was diagnosed, she started having auditory hallucination, which is probably the reason she didn't like religious objects. Due to the medication not working and her worsening state, her parents asked for an exorcism from the Vatican. The Vatican denied them so fast, but two priests did come in and claim Anna is possessed by a demon. Her parents stopped giving Anna her medication and goes along with these priests. For a year, 67 attempted exorcisms were performed on her, and by the end, Anna was severely dehydrated and malnourished, leaving the priests and her parents to be charged and convicted of negligent homicide. So even if the 2005 film portrays some of those aspects, it's highly overdramatized, trying to make it look like Emily was really a victim of demonic possession, leaving the priest to be glorified in doing God's work by casting said demon back to hell. I'm not a religious person and believe more in science, especially when it comes to the brain, because there's so much we don't know. Mental illness is so vast and different that even depression, a common thing, doesn't show up the same way in each person. But that's neither here nor there. The movie definitely had its perks with the flashbacks and the special effects as well. The court case alone is enough to draw me in, and I hope it does for you as well, and you can check it out on Pluto, Hulu, Disney+, Fubo, Sling, Philo, Google Play, Apple TV, Prime, and Fandango. Number 3, The Mothman Prophecies. Mark Pellington directed the 2002 supernatural horror mystery starring Richard Gere. The film is based on the novel by John Keel in 1975, which was a box office hit and eventually gained a cult following. John Klein, played by Gere, was involved in a car accident with his wife, where they discover she has a brain tumor and dies relatively soon after the diagnosis. The grieving widow finds his late wife's sketchbook that has some interesting drawings in it. The main focus of her drawings are of a moth-like man with red eyes. Well, 2 years later, he's driving along some desolate road when his car breaks down. And when he goes to a house to use their phone, strange things start to happen. Apparently, John has been there 2 times before this night, so he just goes about his way. However, he ends up in a hotel in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which was hundreds of miles away from where he intended to be. Soon he learns that strange things have been happening in the town, and people have been calling in to report a mysterious moth-like man with red eyes. Even the residents' dreams are being attacked in a sense. I'm going to let you see the rest of this film, as it's intriguing, a nail-biter, and has a bit of truth behind it. In Point Pleasant, from 1966 until 1967, there were several sightings of this massive winged creature. Many believe the Mothman is an omen for bad things to happen, and the sightings line up with the Silver Bridge collapse in December of 1967. Since the bridge collapse, sightings have happened all around the world, one case being just before the 1999 Russian apartment bombings. Some claim to have seen this creature in northwestern Arkansas, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of reports in the Chicago area. There's even maps that show where all these sightings are. But we don't know what kind of omen we're looking for. Is there something on the horizon that we can't see? Are people just having similar dreams to the ones in Point Pleasant? There are tons of questions, but I found the film to be an interesting take on the old sightings. Make sure to take some time to check out this story on Starz, Hulu, Fubo, Sling, Roku, Prime, and Philo, and send over some of your theories. Number 4, The Strangers. Brian Bertino wrote and directed this 2008 psychological horror that was inspired by a few different stories. In the film, James and Kristen, played impeccably by Scott Speedman and Liv Tyler, going to James' childhood home that is kind of in the middle of nowhere. Well, earlier in that evening, Kristen rejected James' proposal, so the rest of the night is kind of shot. At the house around 4 a.m., a stranger knocks on the door asking if somebody was there, and the stranger leaves when she learns that that person isn't there. Kristen makes a comment about being out of cigarettes, and James decides to go and get some, needing some time to just drive. While he's gone, the stranger comes back and Kristen calls James, telling him what's going on when the line suddenly gets cut. Kristen starts panicking as she hears metal being dragged outside, then opens the curtains to find a masked man waiting for her. Eventually, James comes back saying there's nothing out there. Literally, dude just got back home. He'd know, right? Anyway, after they check out the house, they notice the woman that was at their door earlier is now outside watching them. Things escalate when they try to leave in their car that has a smashed windshield and flat tires when a pickup truck comes crashing into their car. Now, James is a fighter while Kristen is a typical why me type of person, and this dynamic plays out well between the two, but it really doesn't help them in the long run. What I find fascinating though is that this plot is inspired by 3 different crimes. One is of all the break-ins the director witnessed as a kid. The other is of the Manson murders of Sharon Tate and others. The main crime this film depicts is the 1981 Ketty Cabin murders, where a mother, son, daughter, and son's friend were brutally murdered in cabin 28 at the Ketty Resort. Well, the mother and the 2 boys were found at the cabin. The daughter, on the other hand, was declared missing until 1984 when her body was discovered. These murders have gone unsolved to this day, but investigators feel they're closer than before due to new evidence that was found. In 2004, Cabin 28 was demolished, but make sure to take some time to check out The Strangers on Netflix, Prime, Apple TV, and Fandango. And remember, don't answer the door. Number 5, Open Water. 2003 survival horror thriller is one for the books because the audience is left to question if these things actually happened. How did this couple die? Did they die or did they just vanish? Well, we followed Daniel and Susan, a stressed out couple from Louisiana, as they decide to go on a trip to get back to each other. On the second day of their vacation, they go on a group scuba diving excursion and inadvertently get left behind. Mind you, they're stranded among the Great Barrier Reef, and we know that area is vast with all kinds of dangers lurking just below the surface. Anyway, they realize they're stranded and assume they've drifted too far from shore to swim that way. Though the couple fights, they are still there for each other. At first, Susan was lightly bit by a shark. Jellyfish are attacking them, and more sharks are circling them, waiting for them to succumb to dehydration and exhaustion. After some time, Daniel does get attacked by sharks, and Susan tries to keep him by her side, but eventually releases him to the depths, causing a feeding frenzy. While absolutely alone, hope all but vanished, she looks into the ocean, sees there's no way out, strips off her suit, and disappears into the dark water. I love stories that give hope, and this one really doesn't do that. Instead, it slowly rips it away until there's nothing left. This film is inspired by Tom and Eileen Longren, who went on a scuba diving trip on the Great Barrier Reef and were accidentally left behind. In the film, the company discovers them missing the next day and a search ensues. However, it was actually 2 days later, and for the following 3 days, massive searches were conducted to no avail. There's plenty of theories of what happened to them. None are pleasant. Some say that Tom was looking for a quick and peaceful death, and that Eileen would have never leave her husband, no matter what. That's not the case entirely, though, as those theories came from excerpts from their diaries, using only the depressing sounding clips to make it seem more of a suicide. Things of theirs had washed up on shore, and the coroner doesn't believe it to be a suicide due to the way the wetsuits were found. After all was said and done, the skipper was tried for unlawful killing, but found not guilty. The company he worked with, Outer Edge Dive, pled guilty to negligence and eventually had to close. Due to this case, Queensland's government came up with stricter regulations, hoping this tragedy never happens again. But you can check out the story on Tubi, Pluto, Roku, Fandango, Fubo, Prime, Google Play, and Apple TV. Number 6, Dead Ringers. Jeremy Irons stars in the 1988 psychological thriller directed by David Cronenberg. We follow twin brothers Elliot and Beverly Mantle through their OBGYN practice and the rise and fall of their lives. They were known for their specialty in fertility problems a lot of women deal with, both past and present, and were able to get women to conceive and give birth, often assisting in the birthing process. However, as time went on, they became more erratic and crude, often changing places with each other just because they could. After some time, it becomes known that they were addicted to barbiturates and amphetamines. During this time, they become reckless and unpredictable, causing other doctors to question if they should even be practicing. In 1975, the twins were found dead in their apartment at the age of 45. Police and medical professionals could not figure out the cause of death, leaving people to wonder why these genius doctors died. So this film is actually based on the life and death of Stuart and Cyril Marcus, who specialized in infertility and opened their own practice. Things they did were considered almost like miracles, and they revolutionized treatments for infertility. Their textbook, Advances in Obstetrics and Gynecology, became sort of the standard for practices further down the road. But just like with everything else, what goes up must come down. And boy, did they hit rock bottom. The two did become addicted to various drugs, especially considering they had easy access and were essentially forced to get treatment or close their practice. Now here's where things get fuzzy. In July of 1975, neighbors claimed to have seen one of the brothers one day and then never again. The handyman got requests to check on their apartment due to a foul smell permeating the building. So he goes and checks, only to find both brothers dead. To this day, there's still a lot of speculation on their last few days and how they died. Could it have been a suicide? Effective withdrawals, especially from the barbiturates? Or did they just give up living? Possible, considering one of the twins was 5'11" and weighed just 100 pounds at the time of death. We may never know, but I would love to hear your theories, so drop them in the comments, and make sure to check out Dead Ringers on Tubi, Pluto, Sling, Prime, Plex, Apple TV, and Fandango. Number 7, The Birds. Hitchcock's 1963 thriller, The Birds, is one for the books on depicting an eerie real event. The film embodies all of Hitchcock's skill as the original master of suspense. We follow Melanie Daniels, who delivers lovebirds to lawyer Mitch Brenner after he inquires about them, for he wants to give them to his young sister. For what seems like no inexplicable reason, the birds in Bodega Bay become violent, attacking people during the day. There's no reason these birds should be attacking, but it's happening, and nobody knows what to do. Birds are everywhere, and when Melanie tries to leave, she stands face to face with the ominous sight of birds flocking towards the town. Now, many could say this never happened, but there is a real-life incident that inspired all the works. In Capitola, California, in August of 1961, so many birds were seen, and it appeared that they were attacking people. But that's really not the truth, considering these birds ate food that was poisoned from red tide algae, causing the birds to act erratically, almost appearing to be dive bombing people, crashing into buildings and whatever else. truly a phenomenon that Hitchcock captured on film, and you can see it for yourself on Peacock, AMC Plus, Sling, Roku, Prime, Philo, Google Play, Apple TV, and Fandango. Number 8, The Amityville Horror. In 2005, Andrew Douglas directed the remake of the 1979 supernatural horror film that was based on Jay Anson's novel, The Amityville Horror. The film starts off with Ronnie DeFeo in his basement while he comes up and shoots his family as they're sleeping. Mind you, it's a lot of flashing lights and pictures, so if that is at all triggering for things, please be cautious. After we see the family killed, we see somewhat of an investigation and then cut to 1 year later. The Lutz family decided they wanted to buy a new house and come across a steal, this 1692 old Dutch colonial that was added onto over the years. They decided to buy it and move in, knowing that a murder took place in the house. They didn't think anything of it, and George, the new husband, says houses don't kill people, people kill people. Which is kind of a double-edged sword here. From here on out, it's like George becomes possessed or has a psychological break. He becomes quick to anger, often making the family walk on eggshells. Catherine, the mother and wife, wants the family to leave, but George puts his foot down and nobody was going to leave. Later, a Catholic priest shows up and tells Catherine of the evils in the house. At this point, we know everything is going to go downhill after the priest blesses the house. I will say, Ryan Reynolds' portrayal of George was eerie and ominous, which is shocking to me as he normally plays a silly romantic type of character. But now we have to discuss the real story behind the films and novel. In November of 1974, Donald DeFeo Jr. murdered his family, all 6 members. Then was convicted of second-degree homicide in 1975, where he spent his remaining days in prison till he died in 2021. The Lutz family moved in not too long after the murders took place, where they claimed to have experienced paranormal activity, things moving, shadows, unexplained voices, and apparently an appearance of a demonic pig-like creature. The story claims that the family left just after 28 days due to increased activity and for their safety. George vowed these events were real until his dying day. But Daniel, one of Catherine's boys, paints George in a different picture. He went on to explain that George was interested in the occult and exaggerated events. Some could argue that Daniel and George didn't always see eye to eye, but the defense attorney to Ronald DeFeo Jr., William Weber, claimed that he and George made up the whole story, using it as a way to gain more money. Since the Lutz family left the house, other families have moved in, and there hasn't been a single report of paranormal activity since the Lutz family left. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts and theories regarding this particular case. And let me know after you check this out on Max, Hulu, Sling, Roku, Prime, Fandango, Google Play, and Apple TV. Number 9, Compliance. Craig Zobel wrote and directed this 2012 crime thriller that led me down a rabbit hole, and you'll find out why in a minute. But first, we follow Sandra, the manager at a fast food restaurant, as she gets a phone call from somebody claiming to be a police officer. He tells the manager that somebody reported a theft and the suspect is a young woman with blonde hair working the register, which leads Sandra to name Becky. Sandra gets her into the office and denies the claims against her, but the officer doesn't believe her and has the manager search Becky's pockets and to take her cell phone, then to check her purse. Now, does anybody find this suspicious at all? Never knew cops would call having the manager detain and search an employee. But anyway, this officer, if you want to call him that, says he's going to come in and needs more assistance from Sandra. Honestly, I think she knew something wasn't right, but didn't know how to go about it. Anyway, this guy tries to get Sandra to do a strip search on Becky, but wasn't too comfortable doing this but also thinks it will keep Becky out of jail. Becky is then strip searched, told to do various activities, all while being naked, and then coerced into performing sexual acts on Sandra's fiancé. Truly, this is horrible, and I could not believe this was actually a thing. Turns out, it was. The strip search scam calls started in 1994, where a man would call various establishments claiming to be a cop, and that an employee, in most cases except at least two, which were customers, stole money, had drugs on them, or whatever else he could think of. Over the course of 10 years, 70 of these calls were made in at least 30 states that we know of. The Mount Washington, Kentucky case is what the film really depicts. I will respect the victim and not share a lot of her trauma again, but due to the length of time the manager had this employee, to this manager finally gaining another brain cell, is horrible. She called the regional manager after 3.5 hours to find out this caller did not speak to them, and then the caller hangs up after realizing he's been caught. But the younger generation had a trick up their sleeves. Star 69 was used to reverse call him. This led investigators to Palm Beach, Florida for an AT&T prepaid calling card, which then directed them to David R. Stewart. He faced trial in Mount Washington but was acquitted on all charges. Yet in some cases still find him to be the number one suspect. Sure, Stewart claimed to be innocent, but oddly enough, after his arrest, the calls stopped. At least, we believe they did. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe not. Remember, people are innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. So take out some time to check out this bizarre story on Netflix, Philo, Roku, Sling, Prime, Google Play, Fandango, and Apple TV. And let me know if it led you down the rabbit hole. Number 10, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. The 1976 thriller horror was directed and produced by Charles B. Pierce, which is loosely based on the Texarkana Moonlight Murders that plagued this town in 1946. In the film, we start off just months after World War II ended, and a young couple is parked along the town's Lover's Lane when all of a sudden, the hood of the car opens and closes, revealing a man wearing a mask and holding up wires from the car's engine. The masked man breaks into the car, dragging them both out, leaving one left for dead. A few days later, 2 more victims are found, and the townspeople panic as to not knowing who's next. Turns out, these killings happen every 21 days, and the pattern is discovered. As the town learns who the guy is, their fears are justified. Police end up chasing him, but unfortunately he gets away, never to be seen or heard about again. Now this is an intriguing story, but the real case is something almost out of nightmares. From February 22nd until May 3rd, couples were attacked on quiet stretches of road, except for the last one that occurred at an abandoned farmhouse. As far as we know, this Phantom of Texarkana attacked about 8 people, 5 of them succumbing to their injuries. Women were sexually assaulted, sometimes by a gun, while the men were knocked out or killed. There have been a few suspects, but each ruled out in their own way. The Texas Rangers have helped aid in this case, as well as the FBI. But still, to this day, nobody knows who the killer may be, and we may never know. But make sure to check this out on Tubi, Roku, Google Play, Apple TV, and Fandango. Thanks for checking out the video. Did we leave any films off the list? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to tap that bell icon to stay up to date with our latest releases. You can reach out to us on Twitter or X at StudiosFat, or chat with us on Discord, linked below. We're also now on Blue Sky. You can find us at studiosfat.bsky.social, which will also link below. If you're really enjoying our content and want to help support us, click that join button for exclusive content, rewards, and perks. Make sure to check out our very own merch store located at batninja.shop. All proceeds go towards our next film project, so we'd greatly appreciate it. I've been your host, Jamie. Thanks again and take care.